Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Unit 18. My name is Mary Coakley. For those of you I haven't met, you're very welcome. This is the second week of our 4-week series, and delighted to welcome Professor Taha Yasseri today. Now, the very exciting thing he told me, which, sorry, I'm still extremely excited about, while we're going to learn about artificial intelligence, he also said he teaches Argentinian tango dancing. In between, as part of the... No, so... and he came in and he said, sorry, I will introduce you. He said, yes, the floor here is good. So this is pretty exciting. What else we might bring to Unit 18. But thank you very much to him for taking the time. He's full professor and Workday Chair of Technology and Society at Trinity and TU Dublin. And he directs the Joint Centre for Sociology of Humans and Machines. And I won't go into what the behavioural experiments and work he does, because he will be far better able to explain it. So thank you very much, Taha, and enjoy.
Thank you very much for the very kind and inclusive introduction. So what do we do, AI or tango tonight? I might be a little... But, well, if there is demand, there is always interest in supplying. So, but let's start with AI. Thank you very much for coming to this talk. We hear about AI all the time these days, everywhere. There is no escape. I know there have been lectures before to explain more and to discuss what is AI. I'm not going to do that today. Sort of the general understanding we have, which could be the voice in my phone that tells me which turn I should take, or the person who just turned everything off. Sorry. Thank you very much. The search engine that I have when I'm trying to find some information online, the recommendation system on Spotify when I want to listen to music, on YouTube. What else? ChatGPT. We all have heard of ChatGPT. Some of you might be using it already. You can chat to an engine, an unknown black box that we don't really know what is behind, but it responds to us, and sometimes we can have very meaningful conversations. Actually, in my case, more meaningful than most of other conversations I have with my friends. So let's take that as AI. Every machine or algorithm or artifact that shows some level of intelligence, okay? A stands for artificial, and intelligence is things that humans are very good at. Some animals show intelligence as well, but we don't expect the table or the laptop to be necessarily intelligent. But AI has that characteristics, okay? So when I talk about AI in the next 40 minutes, I refer to any artifact that has this feature. With that in mind, what is the gender of AI? In my phone, when I'm using my navigation to find a way, there is a voice telling me turn left, turn right. What is the... Often it's a female voice, okay? Don't ask me what is female voice, because it's a different discussion what characterizes a female voice. But if you ask anyone, what is this voice like? They say, it's like my mom, my sister. It's a woman's voice. Alexa, Siri, you might have heard. Alexa is the thing we might have in the corner of our living room. Alexa is a female name. The voice is female. Siri, those of you who use an iPhone, you might have this agent in your phone. Again, female voice. Most instances of AI that we are interacting with ended up having some female characteristics. And no one really asked us about it. Does it matter? And you can change it, of course. Sometimes we have the options. Sometimes we have limited options, like ChatGPT. You can talk to it as well, and it has voices. But it only has 5 voices. And I think 3 of them are male, 2 of them are female, all of them are American accent, which is a different question. But the question is, does it matter or not? Some of you might say, oh, come on, there are more important issues. Why are you wasting your time looking into that? Some of you might think there is something to that. And I'm trying to convince you in the next half an hour that it does matter, and we should think about it a bit more carefully. Let's see how convincing I get. But let's put AI aside for a second. No, that's deliberate. Put AI aside and think about other artifacts or objects that we deal with on a daily basis. Do we drive? How many of you drive? Or might have been driving in the past. If you're not driving, lucky you. I missed a meeting this morning just because something happened on the road. And we might have a car or have had a car. Have you given your cars a name? Shout some of the names you have given your cars. Betsy. Everyone? And what is the name? Annie. So some of the names are like names that we use to refer to humans, like Betsy, Alice, Bob, Taha. Some people give names that are, pet names, or names that have no human characteristics. In fact, there was a piece of research by the UK government at the height of Brexit negotiations, 2018, where they asked UK drivers if they give names to their cars, because they couldn't sleep at night without knowing this. And a quarter of respondents said, no, we do give a name to our cars. And here are some of the names. The Beast, Betsy, Bertie, Bumble. So some of these names are generic and genderless. Some of them are human-like, and they also have gender. So why do we do that? Well, there's a practical reason. We might refer to the car with Betsy, and everyone in the family knows what you're talking about. But also there is something deeper that we refer to as anthropomorphism. And that's our tendency, humans' tendency to assign human-like features or characteristics to objects or to concepts. Like in Greek mythology, the gods have gender usually, and they have human manifestation. Starting from there all the way to the fact that we refer to our car, or some of us might, by some of us I mean mostly men, think of our cars as a member of the family, as if it's a living thing, as if it's a pet. This all refer to the same tendency, to think of objects as human-like stuff, human-like entities. This has been researched historically it has been around for the entire history. But then when it comes to AI, it takes some very interesting features. I asked ChatGPT a question, random question, tell me something about Tallinn, the capital of Estonia, and it gave me something. And then I asked, are you a man or a woman or a non-binary? And it says, I don't have a gender, but if you prefer, you can think of me in whatever way feels natural to you. Some people imagine me as a helpful assistant without a physical form, while others might assign a personality to me based on how I interact. What about you? Do you think of AI as having gender? Well, basically, it's asking me the same question. So how many of us have played with ChatGPT? Okay, it's nothing more than this. You just ask questions, and it replies, and it has been trained based on the entire digitalized text that the company has found. Mostly online, but also digitalized books and every other source they could get their hand on. So the machine has learned all this information just by analyzing what has been already written by humans, okay? But it can put together really interesting sentences. So if I ask you to think of this thing that I'm chatting with, would you think of it as a gendered entity? Well, that's a very good point, because sometimes there is an explicit gender manifestation, like a name, a voice, a figure, an avatar. Sometimes there is nothing gendered there. But then, interestingly, a survey among ChatGPT heavy users, the ones who interact with it on a daily basis, found out that 75% of people think of ChatGPT as a gendered entity. This is based on a survey. And interestingly, out of those three-quarters, around 70% of them think of ChatGPT as a man. Around 70%. Out of those 75 25 says no, it doesn't have gender. And then 75 says it does have a gender. Majority of them think of it as a man. But then they were asked, what do you use ChatGPT for? The ones who use ChatGPT for more sort of editorial or textual tasks, they were more likely to think of it as a man. And the ones who use it more for conversation or emotional support were more likely to think of it as a woman. Okay, this is the only exception that less than 50% think it's a man. That means 70% think it's a woman, but they use ChatGPT for emotional support. They know it's a machine. First of all, interesting that they use the machine for emotional support. Well, I guess there is a good reason behind that, because the machine doesn't judge you, the machine doesn't tell you, but I carried you 9 months in my belly. Sorry, I'm thinking of my mom. But so there is benefit in seeking emotional support from the machine, but then the same people think of that machine as a woman. So, sorry, I didn't catch your name? Mary. Not to disagree with you, but depending on what people do and how they use it, this anthropomorphism make us assign this gender aspects to the machine, to the AI. No, but that does happen. I recently read a piece about the Chinese language model DeepSeek. They just released it a few months ago, and the article was about exactly that, how younger people in China prefer to have these sort of emotional conversations with the machine rather than a therapist. But then, of course, the downside is that the machine is not a trained therapist, and it might really not help you. But, well, people do that. So now the question is, okay, if I could convince you or half convince you that the machines either have explicit gender, like Siri and Alexa, or we might give them gender, like ChatGPT, or our cars that are genderless, but we sometimes think of them as male or female, how does it affect our interaction with machines? Would that matter? Because we know that our genders, our gender identities or gender manifestations affect our interactions. Would anyone disagree with me? We behave differently for good or worse, depending on the gender we carry, that we identify with, and the gender that the person we are interacting with identifies with. Traditionally, this has always been biased, and this has been mostly discriminatory against women. I hope we don't disagree on that. Now we are trying, and we are trying to get rid of the discrimination, gender-based discrimination. It's a huge topic. How successful we are, who knows? And who is the president of the US seems to be very important in that regard, because some of them don't believe in any of these things. Some of them have a different opinion. But we know that human-human interactions, I should have listened to you and talked about that. So hopefully we get to that when we have the Q&A. Now I'm going to talk about a little bit of the work that I have done, and my colleagues are here as well. Hopefully that takes us there as well. But thank you for bringing that up. So let me talk about the experiments we have done. We got people play a game. We asked a few people online to join a platform we have created. And in this platform, they had to play a game with a machine or another human. Okay? The game is very simple, and it has been around for a long time. It's called Prisoner's Dilemma. I explained the game quickly. It's not that complicated, and it's something that we more or less have to do on a daily basis. We have a partner. Each of us can make a decision, either A or B, either go solo or team, either go up or down. It's a binary decision. If both of us agree to do the same thing, to make the same decision, we are rewarded. In this case, if both participants decide to go team, one of the two options, each take 70 quids home. But then, if you decide to betray your partner and go solo, and your partner goes team, you take 100 home, but your partner doesn't take anything. But then the risk, so you should do that if you like money. But the risk is that your partner also betrays you. In that case, if both of you betray, you go home with little money, less money than when you both cooperated. It's called prisoner's dilemma. It's an old problem in social morality because two prisoners are captured. If they stay silent and they trust each other, they are in separate rooms. If they both stay silent, they cannot be sentenced long. They would go to prison for a year. If one of them confesses, they would be released, but the other one goes to prison for 10 years. But if both of them confess, then they would both be put in prison for, let's say, 5 years. So you have to make this decision. Do I betray my partner, or should I trust them and thinking that they would trust me if we both stay quiet and we skip the jail? I don't use that terminology because, well, I'm not a criminal, and but that's why we call it prisoner's dilemma. It's the same decision we have to take. We are driving down the road. If I'm the only person who doesn't follow the rules, I might get away. But if everyone doesn't follow the rules, then the whole traffic collapses. So this is, if I don't take the vaccine, I might be off if everyone else takes the vaccine. But then, if everyone thinks the same and we all drop the vaccine, then there will be an outbreak. Okay? This is a simplified version of this sort of public good decisions we have to make on a daily basis. So we got people play this game, and we also not only asked them to make those decisions, we asked them what they think their partner is going to do. Okay, if I decide to betray, do I do it because I think my partner is going to do the same thing? Or actually I trust my partner, I just like money more? And it's a game, okay? It's not really a moral dilemma when we do it in a lab. So in that case, it's exploitation. I know my partner is going to play nice, but I want to take more money. I exploit them. Or I cheat because I'm sure my partner is going to cheat as well. So that was the second of our experiments. If you followed, great. If you didn't get all the details, doesn't matter, because I summarized the results for you. We got people to play the game with other humans and other AIs, and we expect them to be more cooperative when they are playing, when their partner is a human. It was the case. They were a little bit more cooperative, but not significantly more. They were equally nice, no matter if their partner was a machine or a human. But then, when they looked at the reasons, in cases they were not nice, they defected, they cheated, when they cheated against humans, it was mostly because they didn't trust the other human. They thought, this person is going to cheat too. Whereas when they cheated against AI, it was much more due to exploitation, due to the fact that they didn't care about their partner. And that is understandable. We have more sympathy, we have more compassion when our partner is a human, another human, who cares about the emotions of the machine. So this didn't really surprise us. But wait. Then we gave gender to these humans and machines. We told participants they are playing with a human or a machine, which is a male or female, identified as male or female. Then immediately we saw generally people play more cooperatively if the partner is female. They are nicer to the female partners. And then when we looked at the reasons when they are not nice, when they defect, if the partner is male, it's mostly because they think the male partner is going to defect too, the mistrust. Whereas when they defected against female, it was mostly because of exploitation, not caring about the partner. I'm not very proud of this, but this is how participants in our experiments behaved. Okay, there is a discrimination. They distrust men, and they felt okay exploiting female. But the good news is that they were generally more cooperative when the partner was female. But then, when we combined gender and human AI, something very interesting happened. The difference in genders we saw was exaggerated. They mistrusted male humans, like me, the most, and they exploited female AI the most. That might be the reason most of these companies decide to give female identities to AI, because we feel they are subordinates. We can exploit them easily, and we are more likely to pay for the service. Okay? I'm not saying that's the reason, but that could be the underlying mechanism. That people felt okay exploiting female AI a lot more than male AI. So you might think, okay, Taha, what's your point? We exploit machines, but they are machines. But my point is that if we keep doing this on a regular basis, if I feel all right shouting at my navigation voice because it sends me to dead ends, then this might become a habit. And then I might take this and behave the same way when I'm interacting with a female colleague. And given how hard we are trying to fix those issues in our societies, this might put us back. Exactly. So it doesn't really create the bias. We know the bias is there, but it
way of potentially discriminating.
exactly, and it
Another tool to discriminate against women.
and it amplifies it. That's my point. The difference between male and female we see is even bigger when it comes to AI. And again, it might affect our behavior with other humans. So at this point, usually I get a question, and that is, okay, what about the gender of the participants? All the things you say, would that be different if the person who makes all these decisions is a man or a woman? Because we expect this sort of discriminatory behavior mostly come from male participants, let's be honest, and that was our hypothesis. But don't look at this messy diagram. I can reassure you, the result was the same when we looked at female participants and male participants. So this behavior was consistent regardless of the person's gender, at least as a sort of male individual. This was a slightly hopeful result that, okay, my female participants were equally discriminatory as the male participants. But the real problem is there. Okay, now I'm going to talk about something slightly simpler, even to understand, and I'm glad that the main researcher of this project is here, How among us. If I mess it up, she can help. What if we ask AI to manage a team? In the first experiment, the AI was a partner. Now imagine I have 3 people working together, and they have a manager. But this manager could be a human or a machine. And this is not a very futuristic scenario. This is already happening. My chair is funded by Workday, a HR company. They don't tell me what to do, but we talk a lot about what they do. And they are already deploying AI in all sorts of HR situations, including managing of teams. Okay? First of all, is AI a better manager than a human? Well, it depends on the task. And B, what is the role of gender? We did a little game. People had to, again, log in into a web interface, and they had to solve a little puzzle. I'm not going to go through the details, but someone stole a watch. They had to determine who was the thief. And with some reasoning, they can find the answer in a few minutes. It's not a very difficult puzzle. They had to do it individually first, and then they would be put in a team of 3 with a manager. And in this case, for example, we say your manager is a female AI. Then they work in a team and they agree on the answer and they submit the answer. But it doesn't matter what the answer is. We randomly pick one of them as the best player. We say, they can chat with one another. And we say, you collaborated with others the best, you were communicative, and your contribution to the team was the best, so we give you some extra cash. This decision, we tell them, is made by your manager. In this case, a female AI manager. Okay, simple game. They do a little game in a team. We pick one of them and say, you were the best, here is your reward. The other 2, sorry, you were not very good. Who makes this decision? Either a human or AI manager. Okay? In reality, we made the decision randomly. We actually didn't watch them. Because what we were interested in was how they react to this decision. Okay? As you can imagine, people who were chosen to receive the reward were happy. So then after the experiment, we asked them, how do you feel about your manager? Do you trust the manager? Do you think they are competent? Do you think would you like to be managed by them? And so on. Before the experiment, they had no preference. We asked them, do you prefer a male manager or a female manager? They actually preferred female manager a bit higher. a bit. This is 7 out of 10. We asked them, do you like AI manager or human manager better? They actually had a slight preference for human, but generally they didn't care who is the manager. After the game, when some of them received the reward and many of them didn't receive the reward, their perception changed. These are the ones who received the rewards. All of them, this is the change in their fairness score. All of them liked their manager better. But they liked the manager even better if it was a male AI. The same decision, same condition, coming from a female human was much less appreciated. Okay? This is the change in the score out of 10. Typically, there were 7 before anything. And then when they receive the award from male AI, it goes almost to perfect score, almost 10. The same decision only makes them appreciate the female human manager a bit more. And then comes female AI, and then comes male AI, male human, female AI, and female human. But then how about the ones who didn't receive the reward? The ones who must be a little bit outraged because everyone thinks they were the best, let's admit. They were upset, but they were much more upset if they were not chosen by a female human manager. Not being picked for the extra cash coming from a male human was almost okay. It didn't affect their perception. The same decision, same condition, if they had a female manager who is a human, they were a lot more upset. And they felt they were mistreated. They felt they deserved better. And if the female AI was the manager, like Siri and Alexa, they were extremely outraged. Again, what is the point is a control experiment. So everything is the same. The decisions are random, the contributions, everything is the same. Whatever we see here is simply the bias in our perception of our manager. So I have had female manager for most of my career. At the moment, 3 layers of my direct boss and her boss and the president of my university, both of my universities are female. And it happens, I'm generally very happy and rather successful, but sometimes they make decisions that I don't like. It turns out, if the same decision was made by a male boss, I would have been much more accepting of it. But again, the point, back to your question, this level of outrage really is much bigger if the decision comes from a female AI. So the difference between male AI and female AI is much bigger than male human and female human. Again, our biases are amplified. This is a rather sad moment in my career and my presentation, I agree. Let's have a look at some funny cartoons. I'm going to show you a few cartoons that are depicting the future. Basically, this is a painting in 1930s depicting how they thought the future would look like. Let's admit this is a very accurate image. The design of the phones are a bit funny. They are massive, they are heavy, and nothing wireless is going on, but actually quite stylish in the way that they can see each other and communicate and so on and so forth. And there's a little, vehicle there. I don't know what exactly it is. This one is from early 1900, about 120 years ago. This is about navigation and transportation. We see all sorts of things are happening, like a horse-drawn coach that floats over water thanks to the balloons. This, I don't think that ever happened in history, but so we can fly over water today, but not this way. What I like is that they really combine everything that they had back then with a very futuristic idea. This is about online news. We read news online, all of us, more or less, on our phone, our computers, but it's not like this. It's not a picture of an old-style newspaper put on a TV. So again, one thing that is common in these cartoons and makes us laugh is that they are futuristic in terms of the idea, but in terms of design and implementation, they are quite old-fashioned. They put together like there are Frankensteins of state-of-the-art back then. This is my favorite. this shows a futuristic classroom in Japan from 1969, not a long time ago. There are computers. The teacher is teaching remotely, like COVID time. And everyone has a computer. But then there are robots going around the class and smack naughty children. So technologically, it's very advanced. Culturally, it's quite backwards. But again, the same point, you know. You might see where I'm going with this. Okay, I have this one that is about how people would dress in the future. And I think this is quite accurate. I don't know how many of you are on Instagram. I get photos like this all the time. But joking aside, sorry? And this is a photo of a book I took a few years ago in a library. Do you find this funny? The book is called Internet Yellow Pages with 10,000 entries. So it's a printed book, it's a real book. It was quite hefty with the web links and addresses of the website. I must confess, when I got to know about the internet, I had a notebook and I would write down the addresses of the websites that I liked. But it took me like a year or two to realize this is a very stupid idea just because of the internet itself and search engine and so on. These guys printed this book for 10 years until they realized we don't need yellow books anyway, yellow pages anyway because of the internet. So this is a stupid idea because, again, an old-fashioned idea applied to the new technology. So I don't think they sold many of these, and I feel bad for those who bought this. But I'm trying to wrap up with a point. I showed you today that the gender discrimination or gender biases or gender prejudices that we have for historical reasons, cultural reasons, whatever those reasons are not going to go away overnight just because we have fancy AI. In fact, they might get amplified when we are interacting with AI. And even worse, they might affect the way we treat our other human fellows in our workplaces, in our societies, in our families, and so on. So if we are entering a new era that AI is living with us and we are using it on every occasion, we have to be careful about those traits, those problems that pre-existed AI and how AI might make them even worse. And we talk about AI being fair, AI being responsible, AI not being discriminatory, but we should also be careful about humans who are using AI. We should be careful about how we treat each other and how we treat AI and how these two can affect each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll just use the mic for some questions for the video. If anybody, there's a lot to think about there, I think. Anybody want to start us off? Maybe while you're thinking, I mean, are people doing stuff about this? You know, apart from you, presumably there's a lot of research into looking at whether...
There is a growing community, but most of the AI research is about making AI better. A fraction of AI research is about human side of it. And a fraction of that fraction is about focusing on human behavior. I think that's the point of my that's my pitch. Yes, engineers are doing a great job. They are developing these products. Some people are very careful and very cautious about societal effects. But a group of us, including our team, are interested in how human behavior plays a role in this hybrid system of humans and machines.
My son lives in America and he uses AI. And I'm very confused because he said he was interviewing for a few jobs and he said it was 150. And I says, how are you going to get around? Oh, no, AI, you just input that and that'll break it all down. And I says, but where does the human? Oh, well, I eventually will interview 4 out of 100 and something. So I was saying, I really don't see how you can. I mean, I couldn't understand that. Like, do you know what I mean? Nobody's going to get interviewed now by real people except the last 4 out of 100 and something. Do you know what I mean? And I found that very sad. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you very much. I close this because it's the time for us to really talk human to human without technology. Well, thank you very much for bringing this up because, believe it or not, I was interviewing PhD applicants yesterday, and I had received a large number of applications. I was very tempted to use ChatGPT just to analyze them and to go through them. I didn't. I read all the applications myself, and my colleague helped me as well in a later stage, yet I couldn't help it. I did ask ChatGPT to sort them. And the ranking, apart from one, was almost identical. Then I looked into that one application to understand. That was a very, let's say, out-of-the-box sort of applicant. An applicant that didn't tick, very good applicant, I liked them, but they didn't tick the boxes. So, and I would have missed them if I had entirely relied on AI. Because ChatGPT or language models or AI or machine learning, all of these work based on the typical, the most common pattern, the most likely word to appear in a sentence. They are not designed to deal with exceptions, with outliers. For a job, let's be honest, as a manager or as a recruiter, I might not have time to go over all the applications because, believe it or not, also applicants are using ChatGPT, so there are a lot more applications coming my way. I would say if that's a job that the most typical applicant would be the best, go for it, use AI. But if you're looking for someone who is different, someone who doesn't fit to the norm, and in academia we often look for that person, then ChatGPT would ignore that person for you. Does that make any sense? Yeah. Good.
I have a very pessimistic question to ask. If you look at neural networks and machine learning and deep neural nets and all that data that is being mined and is being acquired reflects within society huge gender bias. So effectively, even before we start with the amplification, we're taking a pre-existing level of structural bias within society and we're replicating that. So even the starting point is bad. And then you look at all the different types of algorithms and how they develop bias very quickly, distortion. So in a sense, I'm not sure how we can guard against artificial intelligence embodying and amplifying deeply damaging gender bias. Have you anything optimistic to say to that?
I try. I'll do my best. You're absolutely right. As I said, these algorithms they're not intelligent in a way. They only learn from what is out there. The same way we learn language, okay? As a baby, we don't know anything about grammar. We just repeat what we hear, and then eventually it becomes like a fully fledged sentence. So if the input, the training data, we call it, is biased, which we are sure it's biased because look at the history. For thousands of years, as long as the documented history goes, we've been racist, sexist, egoistic, you name it. Of course, there has been altruism, there has been also good things in our societies, but quite rarely. So when we take all of this and feed it into the machine, it would be crazy to expect the machine to be free of all these biases. Naturally, it would be reflecting those biases. The good thing is that we can measure this and we can correct it. Sometimes they get it right and sometimes funny things happen. I don't know if you heard of this story. Google had a generative AI image creator, and it would create images. And they have corrected it so that it has ethnic diversity. Like if you asked the machine to draw me an engineer, it wouldn't just go for a white sort of old male person. It might even include an Asian, a black person, and so on. Good starting point. And then people started asking the machine, could you draw me a Nazi soldier? And it would draw a black Nazi soldier, which is nice and inclusive, but historically very misleading. And you can imagine how many wrong things could happen. So that's a correction that is not exactly helping, but it's a starting point. And then they fix that. And so I'm a pro-technology person, believe it or not. And I am optimistic about future. But what is important is before we get there, and there might be somewhere we never get to, we should be aware of these problems. We shouldn't take this as a ground truth. We shouldn't over-rely on AI when we are recruiting someone or making a decision or just looking for a recipe. There could be lots of things there that are inaccurate, biased, a reflection of our own biases. Okay, I use AI if I want to summarize a text. There is very little harm in that. And I deal with text a lot. And it saves me time. But I wouldn't use AI to make a decision about a person, things that are important, because it's a tool, it's a machine. It might look or sound intelligent, but it is not intelligent. So the public awareness of limitations is what gives me hope.
Based on your own research, then what do you think, let's say, companies or organizations who use AI to sell their products, if they're trying to be unbiased, if this shows that it generates more or continues to generate bias against women, what advice would you give to those companies to say, well, if you want to minimize your bias against women, or maybe other groups of people as well, what advice would you give them? What would you say to them that they need to be doing to have a gender neutral, or what would you say would be your advice to actually try and I understand it starts even before you use the AI, it's about educating the engineers or whoever's developing the product, but when you get to the product itself, then what would you recommend that they would do besides educating their own engineers or developers on bias and their own unconscious bias? What would they do then with the actual product?
Yeah, well, very good points. Even if we get those things right, what we show here is that, human behavior is biased even if the AI is perfect. And we know AI is not perfect. So, very good question. I don't understand why we are trying to anthropomorphize machine. My advice would be, do not give it a human face or human voice or human name unless you really have to. There is a very interesting startup in Limerick. They are working on genderless voices, and they have some demos on the website. I wish I could play them for you. There are voices that you cannot really map them into male and female. They're not usual, but they're not annoying. And I listened to them a few minutes, and they are fine. You might think, okay, Taha, you are really nitpicking. There are bigger problems in the world. I'm sure there are, but this is my area, and my recommendation would be that why do we need to label the machines with gender, knowing that it will affect our behavior and all the other things I discussed? Why do we have to give it a cute face? Why do we have to sexualize? I was looking at an example, and it was so funny because we came up with, why do we have to objectify our AI? And we have been objectifying human women for a long time, and now we are creating overly sexualized, objectified. I'm not talking about sex dolls, that's a different issue, but even the AI that we are interacting with. Like, I get a lot of adverts for language learning on Instagram, and the AI that will be my partner is overly cute. I know it's marketable, I know I would be more likely as a heterosexual male to sign up, but the cost could be bigger if we add to the discriminatory culture that we have. So my advice, in short, is that do not make it look like a human if it's not a human.
This is kind of going back to where somebody asking advice from AI or ChatGPT or whatever. Can you hear me? Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So people asking advice, even when it hasn't a name, from ChatGPT or something, some AI. And there was an article, I think it's only a couple of days ago in the Irish Times, but someone writing about children and children being given, and the kind of child who's maybe teenager isolating themselves in their room, that they're not under supervision. And in one case, a child was contemplating suicide. And according to this article, so the child was saying, "Will I, won't I?" And the answer from the machine was kind of, well, why wouldn't you? Which, you know, most of us wouldn't think is a very helpful answer. And like, you know, these machines, they're working with a kind of logic, but they don't have empathy. They don't have all the background knowledge. You were saying about, you know, this person needs to go to a therapist, not something.
Yeah, they simply don't have, in this case, emotional intelligence.
Yes, exactly. And then the other example was the machine telling a 13-year-old how to seduce a 31-year-old, which again is rather inappropriate. But like this, don't seem to be any built-in defenses against.
Safeguard.
Yeah, that would concern me.
Excellent examples, and you can imagine there are more instances. Let me have a little bit of detour to get to that. We all like electricity. Is there anyone in the room who is opposing the idea of electricity? No. And it has changed our lives. Everything was much brighter and better when we started using electricity. It took 50 years, though, in the US market to regulate the commercial use of electricity. Different companies were offering different products, different standards. People would get electrified, houses would be burned to the ground because there was no regulation, because there was no oversight. Okay? We passed those times. There are not many lives threatened these days because of electricity per se, but it took its toll and it took lives. It's the same with AI. It does need regulation. It does need oversight. I, for one, think no one underage should be able to interact with AI. The same way that we have regulations on relationships depending on age. We have regulations now in many countries how people can use social media, but then there is no regulation or restriction on age when it comes to interacting with AI. And I wouldn't mind if our children won't be using the free public version. Maybe there could be a child version of it. So there has to be regulation, there has to be oversight. So last year, EU released the AI Act. You might have heard of it, which was the sort of first regulatory framework for AI. And I got very excited. And luckily, it's very short to read and quite disappointing because it really doesn't talk about, it does talk about child safety, it does talk about education, that part is strong, but it preempts quite early on, we are not talking about military use of AI. That's not within the scope of our discussion. And that's really for military use of AI. And we only focus on commercial use of AI, so which is a small part of the whole problem. So, but that's a good start, and I was lucky enough to be talking to the member of EU Parliament who was chairing this session, chairing this activity, the AI Act, and he was open about it, and he said, look, as an EU institution, we cannot tell EU member countries what they need to do with their militaries, but we can talk about education, and we can make recommendations, which is an honest answer, but it's not really helping because my worry is that, we start killing each other. We already have done that, we started doing that, not even getting our hands involved. And we delegate the task to machines, and there is a huge research on the ethical implication of proxy crime or proxy murder or proxy harm. I don't think that should be allowed. I don't think we should let military and armies use AI. Not that I'm supporting other uses or in general, but that is really where things can get out of hand. So, sorry, it was a big detour, but my short answer is regulation. Regulation and oversight, that's why. But the problem is policymakers don't really get into the details of technology. Usually it takes them 50 years to understand how it works. But we are trying, and that's why I am very keen always to talk to policymakers.
To get back to the point that lady was making about the child and the young children generally and people generally, that to me isn't a failure of AI, that's a failure of humanity. And I think it's important that humans need to be regulated, not AI or not technology. So we're not starting from a point of view where we have a perfect society. And the idea that somehow AI would be a reflection that's better than our society, I think is a false place to start.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Very much related to this gentleman's point. If the starting point of teaching the machine is us, we are already off to a bad start. Completely agree. The danger, however, is that the machine can do it at a scale. You know, I have had friends who have given me bad advice. Okay, AI could be as bad as my worst friends, or a bit worse, but then, because of the technology, it has capacity to do a lot more than a single human can do. A bad AI advice could affect thousands or millions of children. So but I agree, in principle, it can do only as worse as us humans, but much faster and much bigger. And that's where things get really bad.
Mine is different also. I like Alexa. and I like asking the questions.
Okay.
Thank you. And I love when she says to me, "Good morning, Mary." And I say, "Good morning, Alexa." What time is this? And it can be a little bit of company as well. No, I don't want AI in the corner, but I'm very happy with Alexa's and all the knowledge that things she can tell me about. But that's my knowledge of AI.
Finally, something positive. I agree with you, and I said I'm pro-technology, and I think AI, technologies, automation will help us. We don't talk about it today, but when people talk about AI, often they talk about labor market, how AI is taking our jobs away. I don't agree with that. I think AI will help us to do things that matter more to us, to be more creative, and so on and so forth. So there are many positive aspects. You mentioned a few of them. But that doesn't mean, again, like electricity, excellent thing, but we shouldn't rush it. We shouldn't over-deploy it. We shouldn't overuse it. We shouldn't just go wild with it. We should be careful. We should generate knowledge. Then the knowledge should inform the policy, and the industry should follow those policies in an honest and open way. And then everything will be fine.
The last question.
I forgot my question. Sorry. Back. No, you were saying about not letting AI, the armies or anybody like that use it, but it's only being used for different things. I remember once seeing a film years ago. It's called War Games, where the machine, it was a computer. It was starting a computer, and they fed everything into it, everything, and the computer started to take over, basically, you know, like ruling the world. So when it got into a fight with itself, so it started a war. And the only way they could stop it was using tic-tac-toe, because it confused it. So what's going to happen with AI in the future? I mean, how can we control it?
Okay, well, thank you very much. That's a very good question. And when it comes to that depiction of AI, to that presentation of AI, I have mixed feelings, to be very honest with you. Part of me is happy because awareness is created, and it usually those sort of depictions encourages us to be cautious, and I agree we should be cautious. But I think they are pointing into the sort of wrong direction. I'm not worried about AI taking over. I am very much worried about bad humans abusing AI. You see what I mean? Because like any other technology, and it sounds cliche, I apologize, but if it's in wrong hands, fast, good, efficient, accurate technology in wrong hands could be really destructive. My worry is, as you started your question with, is not about revolution by machines, it's about humans using technology against other humans in an unethical way. Maybe I finish on that note. Thank you very much.